Prisons Minister Jeremy Wright says former prisoners should be given full-time jobs as mentors to other ex-convicts, and also they should be paid for it. Wonder what you think about this story. Let's now talk to Christopher Stacey, Director of Services at Unlock, the national charity for people with convictions. Christopher, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
What do you think about this proposal from Mr. Wright?
I mean, I think we're certainly pleased to see a little bit more clarification on what this process will look like. For a number of months, we've heard a lot of talk around the use of people who have been through the system to help others who are still caught up in the system. And I think it's a really important role for people who have, made that step to move away from crime to be able to give something back. I think the important point, though, is to recognise that these roles are quite serious roles that people need to play, and so it's important that they are skilled and trained to do that, and that they are paid in return for that work. And so it's a good development to see that it's more than just a volunteering opportunity.
But these people have committed criminal offences. They are ex-convicts. Are they the best people to be delivering this service?
They're not the only people that can deliver that service, but I think they do have a certain insight that is able to give a unique input that other people perhaps can't. So I think it's all part of a mixed service, I guess, that involves lots of different people. There's lots of parts to the puzzle. For many years now, people who have gone through the system, people who have convictions, have worked within the system to help others. The system hasn't really necessarily been the best at including them in the past, so there are still a lot of improvements that need to be made. But broadly speaking, that involvement is critical. As a charity, we have people with convictions involved throughout the organisation in the advice that we provide to other people. It's critical to us that people can talk from experience as well as giving practical information. So there is a peer element to that can really connect with other people that, perhaps professionals struggle to do.
Yeah, I just wonder whether the family need to play a greater role.
There's certainly a role for families in this as well. I think, as I say, I wouldn't see this as the only part of the puzzle. There will still be a role for professionals within the criminal justice system, whether it be probation or providers of services, charities, private companies, and whoever. They are part of this puzzle. People, peers, in this case, will be part of it. Family members, friends, employers, the society at large, I guess, has to be part of this reintegration process that people go through.
And what about the current mentor system that we have in our prisons in Wales and England? Do you think that's working? What stories do you hear, Christopher?
As a sort of organisation, we hear a lot from people who have gone through the criminal justice system and are to some extent interested in getting back involved. And unfortunately, we only hear the negative sort of stories more often, but of where people struggle because of their convictions to get work in the criminal justice system, despite the rhetoric around involving people with that experience. So there are problems that need to be addressed. But mentoring as a sort of service, people find that very valuable, and there are a load of successful projects up and down the country where people with convictions are being involved in the delivery of those services, and the people who are receiving them, whether they be in prison or in the community, they find value in that and they appreciate that. And that's really good, because we've come a long way in the last 10 years or so in how people with convictions can be involved in that work.
Because the Prisons Minister, speaking at the conference on the government's rehabilitation programme in central London, this is where this story has come from, he was quoted as saying, and I quote from the Daily Telegraph, "What we're doing with these new proposals is creating a huge new market for mentoring. Peer mentoring is going on inside prisons. It seems to work extremely effectively." Do you think it's extremely effectively?
It's impossible to generalise. It works well in some places. In other areas, it doesn't work so well. I think the important point is to say that this is nothing new. It's just a much bigger process that we're talking about here in the community. There are some other considerations to have in terms of the government's agenda around the privatisation of probation services and how the use of private companies who use mentors may well be at the risk of those kind of services. I think the key point for us is to say that people with convictions who are doing these roles need to be properly trained and resourced to do that. And what you can't expect people to do is, when they've gone through the criminal justice system and they're trying to get on with their lives, to kind of, once they've served all of their sentence, to then have to sort of volunteer back into a system a lot of people do, but that only works where people have the lives that can do that. These are jobs at the end of the day, and the only risk that I see in this is that the government aren't necessarily going to tell providers how to do this. And so my hope, and we would certainly encourage providers of these services to properly pay these kind of roles and recognise that they are an important role. They're not in replacement of families, they're not in replacement of probation services, they are all part of the same puzzle.
But the payments issue is a really interesting one, because I'm not too sure how the listeners feel about ex-convicts being paid for mentoring. And also, how do you judge whether that person gets paid? I mean, do you get paid if perhaps the mentoring system has failed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the technical aspects are ones that will have to be developed. I think where people are still serving their sentence, whether it be in prison or in the community, I think it's right to recognise that people have a role to play as part of their own rehabilitation in helping others. I think there becomes a time, and I can use myself as an example, I guess, where when I was serving a community order, I had elements of that community order where I helped other people. It wasn't a condition of that, but because of the way that, the things that were going on, I was able to help in a positive way as part of my community order. When I'd finished my community order, I then left the criminal justice system to an extent. I came to this charity, Unlock, and did a job where my personal experience is a critical part of the work that we do. And in this role, I'm getting paid. It's a full-time job. And whether it be as a charity like Unlock or whether it be as part of a probation service, that kind of role, once somebody has served their sentence, where they have a unique insight to give to that role, that is where these kind of opportunities should be paid.
Christopher, thank you very much for your time. That's Christopher Stacey, Director of Services at Unlock, National Charity for People with Convictions.